Okay, on today's topic, we're going to be covering how to be comfortable in your own skin.
Now, I know this is something that you had wanted to talk about. Why do you feel that this topic is so important?
For me, it had to do with it being a January thing. I feel like a lot of people start focusing on their weight and on their appearance in January because it's something that, one, culturally we're being fed, like everybody do all the things, people start hitting the gym more, people start doing other things. And I just kind of came to this thought of, let's give some space for this conversation and talk about what it means to be comfortable in your skin and give people that opportunity to maybe just be a little bit easier on yourselves. I know it's January, but like, fuck, man, everybody like, I have to do all the things. And then we set ourselves up for failure. And so that's really where I was coming from it. And then also, one of the things that I'm starting to work on in therapy is this thing called radical acceptance. And I'm still very new at it, so I'm not really ready to talk full about that, but it is something that is part of this just acceptance of thyself.
Well, I know that in a previous episode, you talked about your intention for 2022 being the word be, but you had also kind of toyed with the word acceptance.
Yes. And so that's actually what I ended up, for all of our viewers and listeners, I ended up picking acceptance because acceptance really had more of the essence of what I was trying to get, which is really, I want to accept myself exactly where I'm at and know that one is not perfect. Two, it's a evolving progression, and also accepting the world kind of where it's at. So, knowing, there are things you can influence and things you can control, but there are a lot of things you can't. And so just accepting those things. It's a struggle and it's a practice. So it's definitely something that I'm working on. But yeah, I kind of, that's what I'm dealing with right now is how do I have acceptance?
So really what we're focusing in on in terms of being comfortable in your own skin is self-acceptance.
It is. And what's interesting is when I was doing the research, I found this blog by Christopher Peterson, and he'd written about how this is one of those cliches and that he actually didn't like it. He's like, it's a positive message and it's undercut by how the media shows people being comfortable in their own skin. And that got me thinking about like the body positivity movement and people, really just saying, accept yourself for who you are. But just that thought of it being a cliche, I was like, well, is it a cliche? Because it sounds like sound advice to me, but I also like, having quotes everywhere and doing other things. So maybe I'm a little bit more susceptible. What do you think?
Well, when I was putting together my show notes, they were talking about self-acceptance, accepting the good and the bad. And I think what concern was for many people is that if you're accepting the bad, there is no push to change. It's just like, well, I have some of these toxic traits, but that's Melissa, and I think that was a concern of people by accepting all of you. I think the concept is great, but I also believe in this pursuit to continuously evolve into being a better person, not just for others, but mostly for myself.
I think what you're touching on though is that internal motivation, right? Are you improving because you feel like you're bad, or are you improving because you love yourself and you want to do it because, I want to eat that healthier salad at lunch because I want to treat my body better, as opposed to because I'm a giant fat cow like that. I think a lot of, women, men do it too, but like, a lot of times that's the thought that's going in here. It's like, I have to go to the gym because I don't look XYZ, or I don't feel that, instead of, oh, I get to go to the gym and I get to move and I get to do these things. So part of it is this reframe with this self-acceptance. And I'll tell you what happened with me is as soon as we decided on this episode, I was like, okay, how am I going to practice this? And this is TMI, but I'll tell you guys anyways. Every single day I weigh myself. Okay. And part of the reason I do this is just to kind of see, like, I know my pants are telling me, like, I don't need my pants to actually, say, yeah, you are, getting a little bit chubby. And we have these videos. So I also see it, and I see like my chin. I'm like, oh, that second chin's getting a little bit bigger. Like, I see these things, right? So not that the scale is telling me anything new. Okay. But I do it every single day, and I have a little journal that I just kind of write it down. And then I've done this for like 2 years, and I've been able to kind of see the pattern of like, when does Cydia get fluffy?
Okay. But do you log just your weight, or do you log how you feel in that moment?
No, literally it's just a number. It is just a number. It's the only thing that's doing. But so let me finish this part and hold your thought. And so when we were talking about this episode, what I'd been doing was, there was a certain number that you guys know what this is. When you are set,
target weight?
No, not the target weight. There's a number that once you start adding another zero and you get closer to another zero, you're just like, fuck that. And so like, I'd like stand on the scale, like hold my breath, and like, maybe if I'm like a little bit on my tippy toes,
take off your shoes.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm totally naked every single time I do this. It's like the first thing I do. It's like right after I go to the bathroom, first thing in the morning. And so I'm over here like doing all these things to manipulate the scale from it going over into another 10, number. And so finally I was like, if we're going to talk about acceptance, like, how about you just fucking stand on the scale? Like, don't do anything special. Like, it is only a number. Like, it is one piece of information. It is not telling you anything else. Some of the other stuff. Like, I may put in there like, oh, started, my cycle, things like that, just to kind of have an additional frame of reference of what's going on there. Mm-hmm. But like, I know if I go to book club and it is a really nice book club with all of the fancy cheeses and the wine, I know I'm going to be holding extra weight that morning. I just know it, right? So like, why am I doing this to myself? But having this idea at the forefront of just accept it. Like, just accept that this is where you're at right now, and that you have the ability to change this, not because you hate yourself, but because you're loving yourself into the best version of yourself.
So if you've listened to past episodes, you know that my word for 2022 is me, focusing on me. And that really stemmed from this episode or a conversation that I had with my husband. I literally broke down. You step in front of the mirror naked, and I'm like, I just don't like who I see. And so it just like perpetuates itself. And I remember crying to my husband. I'm like, I'm ugly. I'm fat. Like, I just feel just like so disgusting and unattractive. And I remember when I was younger, I mean, we are told, what the perfect body looks like. And it's, especially in high school, God, it's so cruel. But there were times in my younger self where I had really destructive eating disorders. Like, I would go on crash diets, and then there were pills that I would take because I wanted to embody this ideal image.
Hydroxycut, did you take that?
Yes, of course I did. Of course I did.
I could feel my heart rate just go all the way up.
Well, I like that feeling. I'm always chasing that feeling. But no, but then when you're talking about people at the gym, there's people of all shapes and sizes at the gym. And some of the people that go in there have like this voluptuous body, and they're just wearing like a sports bra and yoga pants, and they rock it. Mm-hmm. They rock it. And that's where I want to be. Like, I want to get to a point where I just love, one, that I'm alive, that I'm relatively healthy. But I want to exude that confidence. I just want to just walk into the gym. I mean, I'll never do that. You will never catch me at the gym wearing just the sports bra and yoga pants, but I want to have the option to if I want to.
Well, I mean, just walking around, right? But like, this is one example.
Exactly.
I want to have that in anything that I'm doing, right? Where I'm walking in and I am feeling my best self because I am doing things for my best self. And if part of that is making different choices, part of what we talked about in the habits is you want to be casting a vote for who you want to be, right? Every single action that you're taking. And that's really what it is, even with our intro, talking about how every moment is a pivotal moment. Yeah, it is, because you are having the opportunity to move forward in a way that's in alignment with who you really want to be. It also means that you get to start fresh at every single decision. You don't have to, go slash all 4 tires because, one bad thing happened. And a lot of us, tend to do that. And I think getting back to just that self-compassion and really that full acceptance of the self is a way to start helping you really own your decisions.
Well, we've talked about self-worth before, and I know that was something even in therapy that I was working on, and I'm still building on that. But I came across this great little quote that was talking about that your value is separate from your actions and your qualities. And that really resonated with me because, we've all made, mistakes and flaws, but rather than beat ourselves up over them, understanding that you maybe needed to make these mistakes to have the opportunity to grow, to have the opportunity to evolve, to be the person that you are today, and to be appreciative of those moments and your resiliency to overcome them.
I love what you're saying there, because it is something that I think, especially I'm going to go on my capitalist parade, especially in a capitalist society, your value from a very early age is dependent on, well, how good are your grades? How good of a worker are you? How many hours did you put in? How long did it take you to achieve your degree? And we have all of these different markers, but really what you're saying here is it is totally separate. You are valuable, Melissa, because you are Melissa, period. Not because of all the other things. The other things are enhancing, but even if you didn't have those things, you still have inherent value because you're here on this earth today, now, sharing this space with me. This is valuable. Mm-hmm. It isn't, okay, this is valuable because we got all of the things going on, because we might have a little bit of an audience, those kinds of things. Like, no, we're valuable because you're deciding to share this space and be here for this ride right now in this moment.
Now, would it shock you if I told you that your level of self-acceptance is determined before you turn the age of 8?
I would not at all be surprised by that. Tell me more.
So they've done studies where basically you're entirely dependent. Your self-acceptance is entirely dependent on your guardians, and all of this is formed before the tender age of 8. Yes. Yes. So if your parents communicated verbally or non-verbally, negative, like you were talking about grades, that sticks with you. And we may grow up to think of ourselves as only conditionally acceptable. And okay, so I know we're on TikTok and we're on all the things right now, but it actually reminded me a story that Elise Meyer shared on TikTok. And she talked about how in middle school, many people described her as round because she was a little heavier set. She said, what would have been more appropriate ways to describe her would have included things like funny, cute, witty, smart, talented, determined, sarcastic, and musical. And that just made me think that, we are so consumed, I think, with image, and society, magazines, television, social media, put this image in our head. It's all socially constructed. And I think that we need to remove ourselves and be kind, not only to other people, but to ourselves, because there are other ways. So yeah, I might not, it's going to take me a while to embrace my naked body, but there are other things that make me amazing. And I think I just need to focus in on those.
Yes, which is why I came up with 2 tips for this episode. The first thing is practicing gratitude. And
why did I know that you were going to say that?
Because I'm big on the gratitude, guys. The gratitude is indeed a game changer. And here's what it does. When you start off with the gratitude practice, this is my experience, and I've seen other people where it mirrors some of the things I'm going to say here. When you start the gratitude practice, you may start with the external, and you might be like, I'm grateful, that I didn't get a ticket today because I was speeding. I'm grateful that the Starbucks person knows my drink, right? Like there are external things. But then what starts happening is that you start shifting, and all of a sudden I'm really grateful for my brain. I'm really grateful for all of the knowledge that I have acquired over the years. And I started looking at myself in different ways. And so now when I do this gratitude practice, I really do try to find things, yes, external, but also the mix of the internal things in there, because just having that self-appreciation. And so I feel like just starting the practice opens that door for you to start seeing the positive outside, but also the positive that you have inside. The second thing is I'm going to suggest, especially because I do think that this topic centers more around the physical than necessarily the internal, is dress for the body you're in, not for your future weight loss. And I know this is a hard one for a lot of people because you don't want to go buy new clothes. I get it. I don't want to, I get hung up on sizes too. And I just figured, you know what? I'm getting rid of clothes that don't fit anymore or that were never going to fit. And for some reason I was like, future me is going to be like rocking that. And, you'll get that advice of like, oh, buy that bikini and throw it at your door and just look at it. It's like, I don't want to shame myself into fitting into that bikini. I just don't. Not that I would normally wear one. I can wear one here with Melissa, but like out in public, like let's not do that. So those are going to be my 2 tips. Practice gratitude and dress for the body you are in now, not for a future one.
I'm going to add a few more tips.
I love that.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So the first one I think is forgiving yourself. So I know that earlier I talked about making mistakes. Now, if you're like me, you are going back and rehashing and reliving that moment, and it does no good for anyone. And you beat yourself up over what you should have, could have, and would have done differently. And it can interfere with your self-worth and how you view yourself. So I would say to forgive yourself. And sometimes you need to make that mistake, like I said, in order to grow. The next one I'll give is, and I'll just keep it with 4. So this is the second one, which is stop comparing yourselves to others.
Yeah. Say it louder for the people in the back.
Stop comparing yourself to others. So I do this constantly, and social media is terrible about it. Now, granted, we all know subconsciously, or maybe not subconsciously, that everyone that posts something on social media, it's typically through like 5 different filters. They've edited it, and I shouldn't say it's not real. But you're looking at this picture perfect, family of 5, or
it's curated.
Them. It is, and I'm like, now I'm comparing my life to theirs, not really giving weight to the fact that we're on 2 different pathways, right? So yeah, they're out in Bali, sipping Mai Tais or whatever, and yeah, I might be here, but I mean, there's beauty in every step. And so I think that it's so unhealthy to be comparing yourselves to other people.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's such a great point. I'm really glad you brought it up, because part of it, especially being in the solopreneur space, is that sometimes people are comparing themselves to the results of somebody who's 10 years down the road from you, right? And that gets really, really frustrating for people where they're like, man, I'm not seeing these results. Why am I not having this? It's like, yeah, because nobody's talking about the progress. You just all of a sudden see it and you're like, oh, wow, they were an overnight success. It's like, actually, no, they weren't. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of effort for them to get to that place. And so that comparison can be really, really harmful.
Deterring, for sure.
But I'd also add comparing yourself to prior versions of yourself. That's really hard. Like, I mean, I know I have a picture of myself from high school where I was like, ooh, I was looking pretty good. But I can tell you in that picture, I was probably like, oh my God, I'm so fat in this shirt.
When you talk about looking at your prior selves, I mean, I'm not going to look at my body because my fat version then was just skinny. But I'm more thinking of, like, I read a journal recently of something that I wrote a few years ago. And I'm just so proud of the growth that I did in reading of my, what was going on in my life at the time. I'm so different. And looking at things like that, I mean, I can understand looking at previous pictures can break your heart. But looking at where I've come emotionally makes me so happy.
Yeah. Well, you're a Schitt's Creek fan, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the things,
David.
Yeah. Okay, good. Fold it in. Yeah. Anyways, Moira Rose at some point gives some advice about taking naked pictures of yourself. And it's an audio that's pretty popular on the socials right now. But part of the whole idea is, yeah, you're going to look back at these when you're in your, 60s, 70s, 80s and be like, oh man, like I wish I would have taken more pictures of myself. And I'm just like, okay, I got that hidden folder. I got some sauciness. Like I think everybody does, but it is part of that is the acceptance and being able to look at yourself. And it isn't, you do it one time. It's a practice. It's going to take some time. And there's going to be times where it's like, oh man, like I do not like, I get these like, these cysts that, especially when I'm being very unhealthy, something about what I'm eating triggers them, and they're very painful. And they'll like be in my inner thigh. It's this condition called hidradenitis suppurativa. And, like I know, like, oh man, like what did I do to myself? And so now I've gotten to a place where I'm really trying to avoid those more than anything else, because the pain, the irritation, the embarrassment, all of those things that come along with this condition is just something that I don't want to do. And I know that I have somehow contributed to that. And so now I'm trying to be more mindful and just accepting, hey, this is something that my body does. This is something that I can't entirely control, but I know that I can impact it by the way that I'm doing this, and just being nicer to myself.
Well, and I think as you're talking about your cyst, it reminds me of when I had to have my partial hysterectomy because of the fibroids. That was really hard for me to accept. And I struggled. And I think I mentioned it in that episode that we recorded, that I struggled with accepting my body. I felt less than a woman. And so, but I now have come to accept and love my new role as an aunt, as a wife, you know, as a sister. So it's really making those intentional reframes, and because you have to be kind to yourself and you have to speak nicely to yourself, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you do. I think you absolutely need to practice doing those things, but it's not an easy thing, right? Especially when you have spent your entire life, and if a lot of these messages are coming in before you're 8 years old and you're getting them from outside, if you've spent a lot of time telling yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not, you know, my hair isn't straight enough, it isn't whatever, you know, the current beauty standard is, yeah, it's going to be very tough to do, but not impossible, because you just start working on training that muscle, start creating that neural pathway where you see more of your good things instead of your flaws. And so the challenge that I'm going to throw out to everybody is record yourself on your phone, just looking at yourself, because I think there's something about getting comfortable with looking at yourself that's really powerful there. Like, I notice a lot of things when we're on video, and I've gotten much more comfortable with being in front of the camera, that most of the time I don't care. Like if I need to say something, I'm just going to say it. I don't have to have the stuff on. It's nice. I know it definitely makes a difference sometimes with the socials. Like, y'all definitely like the lipstick, but it's not necessary. I can look at myself, and I feel like, especially in the lawyer group that I'm in, that's always a big challenge where people get really nervous, or they're like, oh, I don't like the sound of my voice. And, oh, you know, even in coaching, we have to record our calls with client consent, obviously. And that's one of the things that people have feedback on, where they're like, oh, yeah, I don't like the way I sound. It's like, well, how do you want to sound? Like, why don't you like it? It's because you're not spending time with yourself to really reflect back. So that's my challenge to everybody. Post some videos. If you're a lurker on any of the socials, post something. Just get used to that. Or even if it's just for yourself, even if you're just recording things to help you, I think that it's a good way to start really seeing yourself and not picking the flaws. Just take it all in, because, you know, no one's going to be perfect, right? Like, I definitely got a pimple that's growing over here, and I'm like, damn, okay. You know, you all right, well, I guess that's what's happening right now. And you just roll with it. But I'm not going for perfection. That's not my jam. Somebody else might like perfection a bit more.
That's it for this episode. Find us on Instagram at Pivotal Moments HQ for all the behind the scenes and sister-like banter you know and love. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR and Pug Productions podcast.